Welcome to When You Are the Sandwich. Are you balancing the responsibilities of caring for your aging parents as well as your own children? These can be stressful times, and we're here to help. This podcast is your guide to smoother sailing in the midst of the Sandwich Generation's balancing act, discussing informative topics to help ensure order in the midst of potential chaos.
Hi everyone, I'd like to welcome Soma Mondal as a guest today. Soma is widely regarded as one of America's top physicians in midlife women's health. She is a board-certified internist who has helped thousands of women to successfully navigate getting older and reinventing themselves along the way. Earning her MD at New York University School of Medicine and a prestigious research fellowship at Oxford University in England, Dr. Mondal brings a fresh perspective to the topic of women's health, skin health, and aging, particularly for women of color. Fusing traditional Western medicine with her Eastern roots, Dr. Mondal's approach combines the best of both worlds. So with that, Soma, welcome.
Thanks for having me on your show, Tiff.
Oh, I'm thrilled to have you. So Soma, we're going to dive right in today.
Sounds good.
The reason why I wanted to ask you to come and talk with me today is just for us to talk about caregiver stress. I know we've seen it on my law firm side, and I'm sure you've seen it with clients of yours. And I don't know about you, but I certainly have had my own caregiver stress. So I know this is a topic that a lot of people will resonate with. So here's my first question for you as we dive into this. Soma, what are the most common symptoms of caregiver stress?
The most common symptoms of caregiver stress that I see with patients are feeling tired, feeling irritable, having neck pains, joint pains, headaches. They may not be able to sleep. They may not be able to concentrate. So these are the most common symptoms that I see and recognize. But the list is, it goes on and on, depending on how much stress that person is experiencing.
Got it. Now, knowing that, what are some steps that people can take to help manage that stress?
I always tell patients and my friends that it's really important to share your story with people and not feel like you're alone with all of this. So the conversation can be with a friend or with another relative. Hopefully, both would be understanding of the situation. And with that, it's also important to make sure that you address the stress as well as anything, physical manifestations that you may be experiencing with your primary care physician so that he or she can help navigate, resources for you to have to make it easier for you and to also address the symptoms that you may be experiencing so that those get better.
Got it. And if we can, let's dive in. And I know I'm going to want to talk with you about resources, but if we can dive in and maybe talk a little bit more about, you talked about the symptoms that you're seeing as a doctor. And I know that this cannot be a podcast where you're prescribing to people because obviously you haven't met them yet.
Right.
So knowing that, what are some general things, though, that you're seeing that people should really be paying attention to?
So it's interesting because when most people come in to see me, you could visibly see the stress on their face or the way that they're carrying themselves. And they're not readily telling me that this is what's going on. So my job as a doctor is to kind of be a detective and tease apart, what it is that's causing them this much stress. And it's surprising, to find out, the volume, the how many patients are going through the similar thing. So the first step, as I mentioned, is really to tell someone about it. And if there isn't anyone that you feel truly understands what you're going through, then having that conversation with your doctor, your primary care physician, is really important.
Because there's things that can be done to help that person, correct?
That's right. And, often, that very stress that, a caregiver has are the same types of stress that puts them at higher risk for dementia, for high blood pressure, for diabetes, for stroke. So it's really, really important to address those issues as soon as possible.
Okay, and so therefore don't ignore the signs.
That's right.
Now, something that we have seen time and time again for clients who have come to us again through the law firm, is that especially when you have a married couple and one's health is really declining and the other one is really stepping more so into a caregiver role,
Hmm.
that person that was well and is in that caregiver role, actually their health does start to really decline. And sometimes we've seen it where their health has declined so much that they can no longer take care of who they were trying to take care of.
Yes.
Have you seen that too?
Oh, yes. Unfortunately, I have. Yes.
Yeah. And so therefore really paying attention to those signs and getting them addressed.
Yes.
Got it. So now let's shift and talk about some resources that you'd recommend for places that people could go, or for someone that they could find that they can talk with about this.
So, there are two, paths that, I often help my patients navigate. One is for themselves, and the other one is for, let's say, their aging parent or their loved one, or it could obviously be on another realm of, your child, or, some other person that you may be caring for. So that first step is, again, for yourself, is taking care of yourself, making sure that you're having those conversations with your primary care physician, letting them know what you're going through, what you're experiencing in terms of it may be chest pain, headaches, difficulty sleeping, depression, anxiety, and whether it's, getting the appropriate age appropriate screenings to make sure that things are okay, appropriate blood tests, and perhaps having a consultation with a therapist or a psychiatrist. These are all the types of resources that I help my patients with. And let's assume that the other road is for an aging parent. So that's the other resource that I tell patients about, that you can't do this alone, that you need help navigating. It may be somebody else to help with the stress, meaning another caregiver. Um, or it could be, these are the community resources for your parent so that you have a little bit of time for yourself. That often means that you hopefully are connected to a facility or a healthcare system that has a good social work system. And a great social worker will plug you in to all those resources that are available in your town or your city or your state. And, what resources may or may not be covered by insurance, because that inevitably is always a question that I get.
Right, that makes sense. And then I don't know so much in your area of the country, but definitely here in the New England area, there's definitely support groups that are out there. Our community centers seem to be a good resource for individuals to go to for a connection to these different type of groups. But there's definitely there's resources out there for that.
There are many resources. I'm in New Jersey, and fortunately, I'm connected to a system that has, very good social workers. So I'm able to, you know, refer patients to them so that they can get that help that they need. But beyond that, if you go to a library, there are resources there. If you go to the, local township, they can provide resources for you. But people should not feel like there's nothing available. Unless they look, things will not be available. So it's important that they reach out to all the different resources so that, they can find out what's feasible for themselves.
Now, I've said with clients, you need to put on your own oxygen mask first. So that
Mhm.
analogy for that plane situation where the oxygen masks fall and whose mask do you put on first, the person
Right.
next to you or yourself? And you need to put on yourself first in order to make sure you can help the other person. I think that analogy carries through with caregivers. Yes?
It does. But, us being women, I can share with you that, and I don't think I'm any different. Women tend to like do everything until they drop.
Right.
And I have developed a phrase, and it involves the oxygen mask as well, but I always tell them I am the voice of gentle reasoning. I myself am a caregiver. I have an aging parent, I have a family, I work full time. So I am here to tell you that I do understand what you're going through, but it's very important that you take care of yourself first. And then I give the spiel about the oxygen mask, and I tell and remind them that it's important for them to take care of themselves first, because if their health starts failing, then they will not be able to take care of anybody else.
Yeah, yeah. And then something too that I've heard from clients over the years is, well, I should be able to handle this. I should be able to do this. And eh, I think it's very normal to say, you might not be able to all by yourself. Yes.
That's totally true. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all human beings. And I think, again, women tend to be multitaskers, and they sometimes bite off more than they can chew. But it's one thing if we were 20 years old, but often enough, we're in our midlives, in our 40s, our 50s, when we're at other stages where we may be perimenopausal or menopausal. And again, those puts that at risk for other health issues. So the stage of when caregiving often presents, you're not invincible. You are, you know, at risk, especially with the high stress that comes on with being a caregiver.
Yeah, and then, and we haven't really even touched on this, but in addition to reaching out for resources, reaching out for help, like bring someone in if you can to take pressure off for a year for an hour or two so you can get out, right? Or
Right.
adult daycare services or tap into governmental benefits that may provide a caregiver for a few hours.
Right.
Do you find that your patients know about these resources, or do you feel like you have to tell them about it?
I often tell them, where they can go to, because again, it can differ, depending on where they live. At least that's how it seems to be in New Jersey. Um, but, as you're probably aware, some of these, extra help are not often covered by insurance,
Right.
and you have to, be willing to, pay for them yourself. But I'm like, think of it as money well spent, because then that is additional time that you can spend with your child, or you can be reading a book, or you can be getting a manicure, or you could be doing whatever it is that you need to do, you know? So it's not money wasted. And it really helps to have a community of people, a village that helps that person, because inevitably you need help, because otherwise the stress gets too much for one person.
Yeah.
I found myself in this situation, a while ago, and my kids were very young at that point. One of them was a toddler. And, when this happened, I was just, my brain was like scrambled eggs. And I realized like I could not do this by myself. So going through, even like their, I went through Facebook community pages to find additional people that I even interviewed to help my parent. And then I also have an aide, which is very helpful.
Good.
Um, but I can't do it all by myself. I can't.
Yeah, no, I don't having this is now years ago since I've been a caregiver. And I know in the future I will be a caregiver again. But it's something that you can't do alone. You can't.
No,
It
no.
just it's not manageable. So one thing I also just want to mention for those listening in is, and this is not, even though we're sponsored by my law firm for this podcast, but I really encourage someone to sit with an attorney who specializes in uh, people who are aging,
Right.
because there may be some additional benefits that someone can tap into that they might not even realize. And so
Correct. Yes.
there might not be, but it's always good to explore to just make sure that is you're getting what you can and what's appropriate for you. So Soma, as we kind of wrap this up, what are the parting words that you want these listeners to walk away with?
I think even though none of us signed up to be a caregiver, it is a wonderful thing that you're doing. But in order to be able to do that as effectively and, well as possible, it's important to take care of your physical and mental health first. And that involves also asking for all the different resources, not only for your loved one, but also for yourself. And often the first person to go to is your primary care physician to be able to have that conversation and find out what you need to do.
Soma, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Tiff, for having me.
And Soma, before we finish up and say goodbye, how can folks find you?
You can find me at somamandelmd.com, and my website includes all my social media handles.
Thank you. I will be sure to check it out. And thank you as well to those who have tuned in for this. Don't forget, we release new episodes every month, so please make sure to subscribe and stay tuned. And as always, I hope you all have a good rest of the week.
We are happy to be sponsored by O'Connell Law. To learn more about what they do, visit o'connelllawgroup.com.